How can you run serverless applications on Kubernetes? The answer is Knative, a tool that allows you to run functions, eventing, and also serve applications on Kubernetes using serverless. In this video, we are going to talk about what is Knative, how it works, what is Knative functions, serving and eventing, and also demos so you can use it with your own Kafka Streamzy. Day number 7 of 30 days of CNCF projects. Let's go. Knative is an open source enterprise level solution to build serverless and event-driven applications on Kubernetes. Whenever we talk about serverless or event-driven system, it's always easier to build them on the cloud because we can use cloud services for that. We got function as a service, and we also got the way to glue it into some other event-driven system. But when we are in Kubernetes, we need to build everything on our own. We need to take our code, we need to build a container out of it, we also need to deploy it, we need to configure auto-scaling. If we do need some glue, we need to code it on our own. And basically, Knative allows us to do all of that within a single tool. So before we are jumping into what Knative and how it works, let's explain what is serverless. Serverless is a solution to run application without taking care of the servers. Yeah, you're right. Even in Kubernetes, when we run our own application, we don't really need to take care of the servers. We just apply our deployment YAML and it runs, and we can use managed services to run those. But the way serverless behave is the way that it allows us to abstract the infrastructure and focus more on the code and the business logic we want to have in our own application. There can be different abstraction layers. One of the main and the most popular one is functions. In function, we just write our own code. For example, we can have Python function. We will write only the Python code and some other tool, it can be Knative or any function as a service that you know, will run and execute the code whenever it needed. This is the highest abstraction because we're just writing the code and everything is taken care by some other third-party services. We got one more model, which is container serverless, when we provide the container image, but the solution actually takes care for all the other things. For example, we don't need to take care for the auto-scaling, and we don't need to care for some of the glue. For example, if an event coming into our system, it will connect and trigger the execution of our container image. So it's a different model, but it allows you to build your container, but someone else to run and be responsible for them. It's different in a way that you don't need to connect some other things to it. Later, we are going to talk how Knative, event-driven, and serving can help you to create serverless application with your own containers. So those are the two different models we are going to focus when we are talking about Knative. Going back to Knative support both ways. It can support code only or function as a service capabilities. It can also support what's called Knative eventing and connect your own container. This is bring your own container solution to Knative events. So we can connect Knative eventing to a Kafka topic, and whenever event is coming through the topic, your application and container will be triggered to run. It can also support what's called Knative serving. Serving basically allows you to serve requests with your own application. Anytime a request will come in, your application pops up and will return an answer from your own container. This is really good because it takes care for some of the deployment and the auto-scaling you need to have. For example, when you deploy using a simple deployment, you cannot scale it to 0, but with Knative, it will automatically scale it to 0. One thing that is really important to understand about Knative is how it works. So we got different methodologies about how Knative works behind the scenes. I don't want to go deep into each one of those, But essentially, what runs behind the scenes is pods and containers. Knative is just the abstraction that allows you to use it as function as a service to build your own eventing or event-driven system, or to serve your own user using Knative. But there is no magic behind the scenes. It's just pods and containers, but it's abstracted from you, so you don't need to use it directly. Why even bother to run serverless containers? It sounds a little bit like in between. It's not fully serverless, which just bring your own code, but it's not fully Kubernetes native. So there are like benefits of it. For example, it's easier and have a lot of abstraction level. For example, you need to take care just on your own Knative deployment and not about all of the rest. It's CRD, so it's fully customizable and be updated by the Knative releases, which is a little bit different from the Kubernetes ones. Also, auto-scaling, it helps you to scale to zero. In some application, it's very critical, but it also auto-scale it while you go along the way. For example, with Knative serving, anytime a request will come in, it will pop up a new serving pod and will serve it. It also will redirect requests to pods that are already spinning, but you don't need to take care of the routing and to scale it up or down. It's got like upside, but also downside. Progressive rollout can become easier. In Kubernetes, you have only rolling upgrade or recreate, but in here you can do something that is more interesting, a little bit similar to Argo rollout. Events integration and especially all things regarding event handling is much easier. All the glue that you need to do in order to connect it with even like REST APIs, to Kafka topics, to RabbitMQ, to whatever event-driven like queuing that you have in place. It's much easier to do that when you have the Knative framework in place to do that. It's also pluggable to Kubernetes, so it's built for Kubernetes. Everything is out of the box and ready to run. So there are some benefits to it. It just depends on the use case and what you're trying to solve. For some system, Knative will be like overhead, but in other system, it can be a real time savior in order to deploy on time and also scale along the way. Now that we understand what is Knative, how it works, and what are the use cases and what the benefit for it, let's talk about Knative functions, eventing, and serving. Knative functions is the easiest to understand because it's as simple as it sounds. You just create a function, you custom your code in it or change the code based on what you want to do, and then you just deploy and run it. As you can see in this example, this is a Python example. When you just create a function, it will create like directory for your function. You will use the func command line. So it's something created by Knative. You would build it, you can run it and test it locally, which is really cool. And then you just deploy it. And that's it. It's as simple as it can be. So this is Knative functions. Just create, write your code, deploy it, run it, and that's it. Knative serving is the way to run our own web microservice or application in Knative. If we will take a look on this diagram, what we will see on the top is our service of function, meaning what would be our microservices. Let's say that we have a backend API and we want to run it using Knative. We got the route that will route the traffic to it, the configuration of our microservice, and the revision, which is the history of each one of our deployment. If we'll take a look about the architecture, it will look a little bit different. We got the Knative resource on the top, which those are the resources created by Knative. And a little bit below, we will see the network diagram, which is the ingress gateway where request actually getting into our own application. If it's using serve mode, it will go directly to the pod at the bottom. And the pod is actually where our container is running with the Knative kubeproxy in it. If we are using proxy mode, we will also have activator and autoscaler that will help us to scale the number of pods based on the number of requests that we have. So this is in high level the architecture of how Knative works. We can also take a look about the request flow with Knative serving and the user making the request into the HTTP router. If you are using like the direct flow, it will go to the queue proxy, which you can see at the bottom. It's a little bit at the bottom of the screen. And then we got the activator that using the Kubernetes API in order to scale if it's needed. So basically what we get in here is the ability to redirect requests into our own containers, but we don't need to take care about the redirection, the auto-scaling, the number of pods that are available, and also for the proxying. All of that will be handled by Knative. So it makes it a little bit easier to deploy our applications if we don't want to configure the behavior of our deployment, config maps, all the resources within Kubernetes that comes together in order to run a single and very basic applications. And this is the value of Knative serving. It's allowed to serve user in a large scale very, very easily. And the last, my favorite, Knative eventing. With eventing, it's basically allow you to create event mesh, where events can coming into your system from different and a wide variety of sources. And what you want is trigger your own application to do the business logic, for example, to route, to do some processing of the events. And whatever you want to do with the event, it's really easy if you use Knative eventing. So building event-driven system can be a little bit easier. Let's take a look on this example when we have like multiple and wide varieties of event sources. It can be S3 bucket, different applications, some even Kubernetes resources, Git repositories, Kafka topics, whatever stream or MQs that you are using, any of those can come into the Knative broker. The Knative broker can use wide varieties of options, let's say even a fan out, for example, to trigger different things. It can be our own Knative applications. It can be even send an API locally to a pod. But what we can do is control the flow of events into our system very, very easily. And if we do right the processing in Knative, it also make it much, much easier to deploy, because we can write our own application that will take the events, will do the processing, and will send it over to some other place, and it will be triggered by Knative. In that way, we can easily deploy event-driven applications and system without taking care about all the glue needed to be coded in order to create the fan in, fan out, how do we receive the broker, how do we split it, how do we scale those. All of that will be handled by Knative. And if we will take a look about a different diagram, we can take a look how events actually coming in. We have two sources, sources 1 and sources 2. They are both coming to the same broker, and then the broker actually decide which one should be triggered. It can be even done, I think, based on payload. And we can see that we have two things as what are the target that should be triggered. It can be our own application, and in the demo later today, we will see how that look like. And we can see event number 1 will go to the bottom sync, and if the events of number 2 will go to the top sync, and we're able to filter and route the events based on their payload. We can also have a way to create some channels, which is a different way to manipulate event in our event mesh system. So if you want to build event mesh system or event-driven system, and you think, how can I do that easily on top of Kubernetes? Knative may be a good solution for you using the Knative eventing. For the demo today, what we are going to do is to deploy both Knative serving and Knative eventing. What we are going to do is that we are going to create a very simple system that will get events through a Kafka topic. All the events, all the cloud events, we will get into a Kafka topic. And then using Knative eventing, we will send this event into our application. How do we do that? We will have Knative serving that will run our own container, and those will get the events and process them. So the Knative eventing will get the event from the Kafka topic and then trigger the sync to the Knative serving. So we will use both projects to create event-driven system very, very easily using this demo. I would add that if you want to look for different code examples of serving and eventing, they are available through the Knative site, doc samples serving and eventing. Really great simple applications that you can use. But in this demo, what we are going to use is my own repo called How to DevOps. I will add a link to the description so you will be able to deploy Knative and also run this demo on your own. So let's start. To deploy Knative, we do need the Knative operator. So I'm going to copy this command and paste it, and that will deploy the Knative operator. If we will do kubectl get pods, you will see that the Knative operator and the operator workbook actually starting to run. Okay, and now that we got the operator up and running, means that we got the operator that will help us to deploy Knative eventing and Knative serving. So next we are going to deploy Knative serving. So for that, let me show you how the Knative serving configuration look like. So we are going to create a new namespace called Knative serving, and then we are going to deploy Knative serving, and we are going to use a courier ingest for that. You can see the configuration in here, just a very simple and basic one just to make it up and running. So then I'm going to deploy the Knative serving. And that will take a while. So while we are waiting for it to be created, we will create more resources and we'll set up the environment. So if you do want to check it, you can always do kubectl get Knative serving, and we will check on namespaces, and in a few minutes it should be ready. Okay, but as I said, it's not only Knative serving that we are going to use, we are also going to use Knative eventing. And for that, we need our operator to help us manage Knative eventing too. So we are going to create namespace Knative eventing, a very simple configuration that we are going to deploy. So I'm going to apply it. And again, if I would do kubectl get Knative on all namespaces, we should wait for it to be ready. But that's not it. We need also to have Kafka to be connected to Knative eventing. So for that, we need Kafka, but we also need Knative eventing our deployment to support Kafka connectors. So we are going to deploy Kafka controller for Knative. You can see it's a Knative extension in here. So we are going to add it because we want our Knative to support Kafka. It will create a bunch of resources in our cluster, which is fine, and also the Kafka data plane. If you want to explore, you can follow the URLs in the Git repo and understand exactly what resources being deployed. Basically, the eventing broker that we have in here. Oh, sorry. Okay. And what else? We also need to have some Kafka topic that we can write event to it, and then the application on the other side will get it and process it. So for that, we are going to use Streamzy. Streamzy is a Kafka operator for Kubernetes. You may saw it in one of the videos, and later in the series we are going to do a full video about Streamzy, which is going to be a really cool video, so stay tuned and subscribe for that. And what we're going to do next is to create a Kafka cluster and a Kafka topic. If you do want to explore how those being created, you can go to Streamzy Kafka. Oh, sorry. And we do have the Kafka cluster. It's a very basic one, pretty simple. And also with the topic that's going to be named Knative demo topic. And that's it. So let's deploy them. Apply Kafka. And now we should wait for all of them to be up and running. So we can see our serving is ready. Let's check our eventing. Also ready. For Kafka, it will take a while to be ready. After a few minutes, our both Kafka topics will be ready, and also our Kafka cluster will be ready. And now we are ready to go. So meaning everything is ready. What we need to do is to deploy our service. So what our service in Knative serving going to do is basically to get cloud events from Kafka and just deploy them, print them into the log, so we will be able to see them. It's a very basic application, and what we want to emphasize is how easy it is to create it. So what we have in here on the right side is a very basic deployment. It's a serving service. It uses a container. You can see the container in here. It's part of the Knative examples. So I'm going to deploy it. It creates a warning that it's not that secured, which is fine. I'm okay with that. And what we're going to do next is to check the pod of it. So what we can see is that the event display that we just created is running and ready. It means why it got like two containers. One is, as we said, a Knative container, like the proxy one, and the other one is our user container, which is our own application. Next, what we are going to do is to create Knative Kafka source. This is what connects Knative eventing with our Kafka topics. On one side, anytime an event will come into the Kafka topics, and here is the configuration. It will use the Knative consumer group. It will use the local cluster, Kafka cluster for that, and this is the topic. Anytime an event will go through that topic, it will read it and send it directly to the sink, and the sink will be our event display application. So let's do that. Great. And what we also can do is to query that, kubectl get. And we can see that the binding is in progress and it's not ready yet. It will take it a few seconds to be ready. And once it's ready, we are okay and ready to enter or insert our first event and get it. So let's wait for a few more seconds, and then we will insert our first event and see how it printed using Kafka eventing and Kafka serving in our own service and application. After a few seconds, we can see that now our binding and Kafka source is actually ready. Everything is ready to go. And what we need to do is basically create our cloud event. So for that, we're going to copy that code. This actually will spin up a container. It will take it a while to run. It will spin up a container that will connect into the Kafka. It will produce an event. The event will be empty or something like that, just to show how it flows through the stream. And on the other side, we will be able to see that printed on our application logs. So it's a very basic thing. What it does, it's actually run a container called Kafka, a pod called Kafka Producer. It will use the image of Streamzy because it's got all the binaries in it. And it will do Kafka console producer, and it will basically create a new event in it. So let's give it a few seconds to generate the event, and then we will watch the logs and see how the event is being printed. So now we are ready to test it. And what I did on the other side is that I run these kubectl logs to actually see all the events coming into the pod that we have. And now I'm going to run the same command. And what it will allow me to do, let me run another one. Create a new one. And soon I will be able to create events into the stream. I will need to see the mark for events being created. It's a little bit slow for program. Oh, now you see it. So I have this mark, and from that point, meaning I'm generating event. So I can now guide test event in here. What would happen is the event will be added to the Kafka topic. Knative eventing will transfer the event from, it will get that event is coming in from the broker, will transfer it to the Knative serving, And if we will check the logs, we'll be able to see it in here. And now we see that the event was printed and it's guy test event. We see it from the serving event, the event display. And this is the full flow. By the way, if I will get in more events, it will be added in here, demo test event. And this is how easy it is to basically create event-driven system using Knative eventing and Knative serving. It's the full flow. We got an event into the topic, we transferred it into the Knative eventing, it will get it, fan it to the whatever direction that we need, and then we got into the serving that trigger, make it run. By the way, if you will be able to see it from here, we will see that the pod is kind of new, so we spin up anytime it's needed. And that's it. So if you do want to use Knative, you can take those examples and use it. And that's it for the demo for today. And the last thing for today is to add the Knative sticker into the board. So let's do that. Knative. Day number 7, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel.